Can you walk us through Vladimir Putin's political objectives? I mean, obviously we're seeing the use of military force, but how would you characterize his political objectives here?
I think probably the best way to think of them is in a series of stages or ranging from minimal to maximal. The minimal objective was quite clearly regime change in Kiev, the replacement of the Zelensky regime by what we would consider a quisling regime. If you look at how they launched their attacks, they clearly expected that to happen through a quick and pretty bloodless campaign. I think beyond that, what he was looking for was either immediately or ultimately the reduction of Ukraine and I would suspect Belarus as well to something like the status that they had in the previous Soviet Union. That is, maybe nominally independent or autonomous, but really part of a larger entity controlled from Moscow. And then finally, he has had two other broader environmental objectives. One is to limit the spread of democratic contagion. I think that's the thing that has scared him most about Ukraine. And he wanted to both get one of the sources of infection, but also to kind of scare other people off that. And then finally, I think to chip away at NATO's unity and sense of purpose. And he might have expected that he'd go into Ukraine. Some people would stand up for the Ukrainians. The Germans would say, no, 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 Nord Stream 2. And he would have fatally weakened an alliance he thinks doesn't exist. And the main point I would make is he has not only failed at each of those objectives thus far, I think he has set up the conditions for permanent defeat on all of those. And in many respects, what he has done has been counterproductive. In particular, there is no way that Ukraine will ever go back to being in any way comfortable as part of a larger Russian empire. I mean, he's sowed the seeds of enmity that will undoubtedly last forever, and change their orientation permanently towards the West. And he has been the greatest thing to happen to NATO in many ways since its founding. There's a sense of purpose and unity and commitment there, which frankly astonished me and undoubtedly astonished him.
In what ways was, how did that influence, from your perspective, the Russian decision now, and how was what explains the timing for why now then?
So I think, first in terms of the history, I think, he's basically gotten away with something like this. As you've pointed out, Georgia, Crimea, and elsewhere. But where I think there was just a fundamental misjudgment is the scale is completely different. Ukraine, we're talking about a country that's the size of France with 42 million people. Georgia is a small place. That particular Donbass region is a lot smaller than that. And furthermore, let's remember that the previous applications of force were under conditions that were completely advantageous to the Russians. So in Syria, yes, a lot of experience firing missiles, but as you just pointed out, they didn't have to commit substantial ground forces. The interesting question, I think there are probably two big explanations for why they've gotten it so wrong. One is, let's remember, he's living in this bubble. He has very, very few people who dare contradict him. I think when the historians finally get at this, we'll find out that he hasn't gotten anything remotely like the kind of warnings from either the intelligence community or indeed the military community that an American president would get. And I think secondly, there's an element of intoxication with raw military power. He's been building up the Russian military for 20 years now. And you've seen lots of pictures of him with all this advanced-looking technology. He is not a military man, and he's not a military historian. So, I think with that background, you can be intoxicated by the sight of all those machines and all that technology, the way Gamal Abdel Nasser was before the Six-Day War, and not realize that actually the most important thing is the will to fight. As to the question, why now? I suspect that there are, again, several pieces to it. He certainly seems to me to have been preparing for this for a while. I think we now understand better why he really has made sure to crush every civil society organization out there, even things like Memorial, which deals with history, made sure that Navalny ended up in jail. And I think he felt he had to get that stuff out of the way. I think he also saw both a window of opportunity and a window of danger. Ukraine has been moving closer and closer to the West. He may, even though he despises Zelensky, he may have sensed that this might be a leader who could really permanently pull Ukraine off to the West, and he wanted to stop that. So there was a window that was closing, and then I suspect he may also look. He probably feels a window closing because of his age, because of other developments in the world, which might make it a less favorable occasion to do this kind of thing. And so he bided his time and launched this, and made some spectacular misjudgments. I'll just say one other thing though, which is so did a lot of other people. He didn't anticipate the European reaction. Frankly, I don't think most Europeans anticipated the European reaction either.
Yeah, Emily.
One other factor I'd add to that too is the departure of Angela Merkel.
Yep.
He really didn't like Angela Merkel, but I think he respected her. And as much as she had defended the creation of Nord Stream 2, she was also the kind of leader that could really rally Europe. He may have seen her departure as an opportunity to split Europe and to split Europe in us.
So